The goal of my butterfly bicycle trip was to be a voice for the monarch and to really tell people that they need our help. The monarchs need us to share our yards with them. And of course, halfway through my trip, I realized I had a lot to say and I had a lot of opinions. And often I was very angry, I shouldn't say a little, I was very angry at the state of the planet and how much we've stolen from the monarchs and how we've just refused to share. So about halfway through I said, I'm gonna write a book. My favorite part about the migration is that it's multi-generational. So when I left Mexico in March of 2017, I was biking with literally thousands of monarchs. Now, only for a few miles. Turns out monarchs don't follow roads. But I eventually would weave my way back and forth north, and I'd see a monarch or two. And I'd know that it was the end of their journey. I knew that every single monarch I was starting with was going to die before I returned in November. And that's because it's a generational migration. So all those migrants were traveling north. They were tattered, they were faded, they look like survivors. And they arrived at Texas and Oklahoma, where they hope people have planted enough milkweed in their yards, not mowed those roadside ditches too early or too late, and they're gonna lay their eggs on those milkweed and die. It's those eggs that metamorphose into adult butterflies. That's what we call the first generation of the season. And in the end, it takes 3 to 5 generations to complete the whole loop. So when I was in Indiana, headed south, I remember seeing this common milkweed with a little egg on the leaf and thinking, maybe I met the great-great-grandma of this egg. And then thinking, and this egg is going to fly to a forest they've never been, thousands and thousands of miles. And they're going to fly to a forest that their great-great-grandma was on. They've never been there before. I know personally, from experience, that's a very long way. And that's astounding. I call them the most democratic of species, because they don't care if you're rich or poor, they don't care how you vote, where you live. If all you can do is go outside, they're gonna grace you with their presence, and everyone can help, which is not something we can do for a lot of animals. Even a parking lot median, I've seen native plants growing and I've seen monarchs visiting. One of my favorite things about the monarch is that they connect us all and they connect our efforts. So often a person will be gardening in their yard and they'll have just a small little garden and it can feel a little hopeless, right? Like, oh, how is this little garden contributing to this huge problem? But I was able to bike between all these gardens and I was able to see, wow, that garden plus that garden plus that garden adds up. And I've actually come to see the monarch as sort of a symbol for this idea that small is big, right? So when you go to Mexico in the Oyamel fir forest, you'll see millions of monarchs hanging from the branches. And one monarch might wiggle like a needle of an Oyamel fir tree. But when you get thousands together, it'll actually be enough collective weight that they can break a branch. So if butterflies can come together and break a branch, then we can come together, share a little bit of our yards, and metaphorically make change, bend those branches ourselves. I'll never forget being in, I think I was in, where was I? Nebraska. And I was visiting a suburban school garden. And we were exploring this little pollinator garden that they'd created, and there was milkweed and there was some native nectar plants. And then a monarch flew over our heads, and it was like we'd won the Super Bowl. Like, we were so excited. And I love the fact that that monarch found that small school garden. That monarch was there entirely because that teacher had put in the work. She had gifted those kids this connection to Mexico, this connection to Canada, this connection to conservation, and that she had gifted these kids the knowledge that their action creates change. On the course of my trip, I talked to about 9,000 people, plus hundreds of interviews, thousands of roadside encounters. But the book was to say, no, I want to reach lots and lots and lots of people that I'm not going to bike through their town, at least not this year. The monarch is an ambassador to nature. So when we're protecting the monarch, we're protecting the spiders, we're protecting the frogs, we're protecting the birds. Now, one thing I've noticed is that some people think, oh, in order to protect the monarchs, we have to bring them inside and protect them from spiders and wasps and ants. And I just always say, like, bring a few in so you can watch the metamorphosis, but like acknowledge the fact that one of the gifts the monarch brings is lots and lots of eggs that are going to get eaten. And we need those eggs to feed our ants and our spiders so that they can feed our birds and be part of this food web. And so I hope people can fall in love with the monarch and then fall in love with all of the animals that live there. And I call these our neighbors. So I call the monarchs our butterfly neighbors, and we've got frog neighbors and skunk neighbors and bird neighbors. And we have to remember that they are our neighbors and this was their home. And it's okay to take a little, but it's not okay to take all and not share a single square foot with them. And so that's really where my message is. My message is share. Share your yards, share the parking lot, share the roadside ditches, share and see that space not as a wild space that's scary and uninviting, but see that space as full of life and full of potential and full of the animals that make this planet work. And then go meet them and discover they're beautiful. My goal on my bike tour was to be a voice for the monarch. And so I gave the monarch my time and my energy and my voice. And they turned around and gave me friendships and lots of ice cream and lots of memories and fun stories. And so right now, as my way of thanking the monarchs for all they've given me, is I'm trying to start a research project in Mexico. And I did a preliminary study in 2020 because I looked around and I watched this behavior called streaming, where the monarchs will leave their roosts and they'll fly down the mountains, not to migrate, but likely to drink water, and then they'll fly back during the day. And so I thought, how can I study them? And the way I decided was to work with women living around the colony, where they can't go to town and get a job because they have to stay home. And I trained them to count monarchs 3 times a day that stream by their house. And I put up little weather loggers. And so I was able to do a preliminary study and learn, wow, my methodology works. And so now I'm headed back to Michoacan to continue this research and train more women. I consider the monarchs my teachers, and I think they taught me how to see the world from a new perspective. And they also taught me to see that this world often isn't built for monarchs, and the decision makers aren't often thinking about monarchs. And I felt that viscerally. I'm biking down highways, and people are passing me 90 miles an hour a foot away, and they're not thinking about my humanity. Much like when we mow a ditch, we're not thinking about the monarch's humanity. And so I was able to see and feel how the world is often not built and for people that aren't the most powerful. Of course, that being said, I'm a white woman. So as much as I felt the danger of traveling, I still have to acknowledge that my trip was easier. And so I'm conscious of that when I'm biking and thinking, no, again, I'm not the strongest, the bravest, or any of that, but I'm the person that can do this because of how the rules are written. And I camped behind churches a lot. I camped in the woods a lot. Again, I have to acknowledge that maybe someone saw me and they didn't call the police because I'm a white woman. And my vision and my hope is that we can start to see the world and share the world with monarchs, and we can share the world with cyclists, and we can also share the world with people that don't look like me, with people of color that might feel too scared for good reason to camp behind a church. I think the monarchs helped me see that, and I think they continue to help me see that. And I think the more we can see and the more we can see the world through the perspective of different people and different animals and different plants, the healthier the world will be for everyone.